All right, Rabbi say, Hechsherim in Eretz Yisrael is, although mistakenly understood to be the simplest, is probably the most complicated. Out of everywhere, I Baruch Hashem travel a lot. The only place I have to worry more about Shem than anywhere else in the world is here in Eretz Yisrael. I mentioned a couple of points to the Olam the first day of Yeshiva, but we have Baruch Hashem with us who was able to give us some of his time. Rabbi Weiner Shlita, who's a big Rav in Ramat Eshkol, a Rosh Kollel, a tremendous Talmud Chacham and Machabed Svarim, and he's a big Boki in Kashrus, and himself has given Hechsherim to many restaurants and places around the country. So please, Rabbi, so you're going to have very, very interesting, informative, and real accurate information about what is going on in Eretz Yisrael with the kashrus, with the restaurants the Olam enjoy eating out. We're hopefully going to hear about Benny's and about Rooftop and about various other restaurants that the Olam enjoy. Questions, I'm sure. If the Rav has time afterwards, we'll do questions. Rabbi, say, I give you a full attention, Rabbi Weiner Shlita.
The emes is that probably the Yeshiva is one of those that really got me into this mess. Right back then, you were pushing, the Yeshiva was pushing that something has to be done, and then as I got into the mess, he disappeared. And opened the Yeshiva. What a beautiful thing. Okay. So I believe there's three misconceptions that Americans come to Eretz Yisrael with. And I want to speak about them.
McDonald's.
Almost. That's bad, I don't think we're yet. We're getting there. Number one is that everything's politics. Now, I'm not denying the fact that there is a lot of politics here in the kashrus world. There definitely is. But that's not the answer, as I'll explain. It's not the politics that makes this good or this bad. Number two, there are many that believe that a dairy restaurant, no problems. We just got to deal with a Fleischiger restaurant. But I'll explain to you why it's probably just the opposite. And number three is the best hechsher in America is weaker than the weakest hechsher here, which is also not true. So I'm going to first explain in very short what a kashrus organization does for us. When we rely on a kashrus organization, what are we relying on? What are they doing more than I could do myself, right? Why can't I go into a store, take any type of product off the shelf, look at the ingredients, if it looks kosher, it's kosher. If there's something that is not kosher, it's not kosher. Why do I need a kashrus organization in general? What do I need it for? So the answer is as follows. If you took a product nowadays and you looked at the ingredients, you probably will not know half of the ingredients, what they are, number one. Number two, from the ones that you do know, they're made up of other ingredients to get this. Cocoa could have different emulsifiers or binders and different things that are put in there, which could also be questionable. So looking at the ingredients alone is not going to help you. So when we talk about factories, the kashrus organization comes to a factory. They're making sure that the products, the ingredients that are being used in this factory are all ingredients that pass the standard of kashrus of that kashrus organization. But more than that, in a factory, there are machines and there's a lot going on there. And in many, many factories, the same factory that's producing a kosher product is also producing non-kosher products, and sometimes throughout the year they're producing a non-kosher product, and just for this line or this time of the year they can do kosher. So to change over from non-kosher to kosher, or to have both at the same time, there needs to be a lot of supervision. Besides the kashering of the kelim, which could be a very sensitive and difficult task to do, but that's what we're relying on the kashrus organization. The kashrus organization comes to a factory. The first thing they do is, before anything, they say, let's meet the engineer of the factory. Sit down with the engineer. He explains them the entire system of the factory. Many times there are these exhaust pipes that lead to places where they regenerate the steam and make it into liquid, and then they send the liquid back. And it could be treifa liquid with kosher liquid. There's a lot they first need to first check out from just the machinery, then then the ingredients, and then once that passes, now they need to be on top of it to make sure that no ingredients are being changed and the product is being continued to be made the same way it was when they checked this. That's in a factory, which is relatively more simpler because it's all machines just running and they're using the same ingredients in general, but that's a factory. So that's what we're relying on, the conscious organization, that they're doing all this work, which means they have the scientific knowledge and they understand what goes into this. And I was once with a mashgiach, we went to a milk company here, and he's walking around and they showed us 2 storage rooms, and he says to the mashgiach, where's the third storage room? She says, no, these are the storage rooms. He says, no, there has to be a third one, because to make this and this cheese, you need to have this and this chemical, D3, 4, whatever it was, and you didn't show it to us. So he says, oh, you're right, it's upstairs. We went upstairs, the mashgiach looks, the person I was going with, takes one look, he says, the hechsher there is from someone in Germany that generally people don't rely on. So then the guy said, no, it's for returns. It's a whole AC. But just you have to know the malacha to be able to be able to give the hechsher. To make cheese without giving, that's a shear by itself. But just from the milking, delivering the milk from the milking place, which needs its own hechsher, his own hashgacha, to the cheese factory, it goes in these massive tanks you'll see on the road. Those tanks could have been used for really not cholstam, for non-kosher milk, which they need to kasher before they put in the kosher milk. And then when they get to the cheese in factory, they have to kasher the kalim that are being used there. It's a process, and cheese is made with enzymes which could be really questionable. So that's what we're relying on the mashgiach. Now let's move on to a restaurant. Come to a restaurant. In a restaurant, so more or less, you should not have a problem with basar b'challah. In general, you have a fleishiger restaurant, you have a milchiger restaurant, pretty separate. Except sometimes one of the workers is drinking a coffee at the fleishiger restaurant, puts his cup down. Okay, but generally, there should not be any basar b'challah shilas in a restaurant. So when we come to a restaurant, what's the hashgacha doing? First of all, they're checking over the products that are coming into the place, making sure they're the correct products. As in this country, for sure until recently, the suppliers did not have enough of the real kosher ones that we would like. They're always stuck in within your lettuce, which you're asking for Reuben, they put in some other weaker hechsher in the middle. I once had the shuk called me and was with tinus. They were like, why are you making them only get these hechsherim? We don't have enough. We also have to give them a few of the others. So the mashgiach has to be there in the morning or whenever the deliveries come in, making sure that what's coming in is what we're using here. Number 2, and this is in a dairy restaurant. In a dairy restaurant, there's a lot of bug checking because there's a lot of salads going on in a dairy restaurant, more than in a meat restaurant. Meat restaurant, more or less, is a small amount. Many times they just buy pre-checked and that's it. But in a dairy restaurant where there's so many salads, all the leafy vegetables need to be cleaned, checked properly, which I've seen. I went into one restaurant, guy's taking the head of lettuce, sticking it in the sink of water there, and sticking it in, pulling it out, and they're like, what are you doing? Cleaning the lettuce. No, you gotta take it apart. I mean, I've been doing this for the last 8 years. What are you telling me what to do? So again, they need direction. So the mashgiach has to be there, and many times, many chesherim are makbid that the mashgiach is the one that does it, or if the guy does it, mashgiach has to check it over afterwards that it was done properly. When you make the guy put in a lot of soap, so that he'll have to wash it off well. So again, there's different tricks, but there's the bug checking. There's the sifting of the flour. So even if you own home, you don't find bugs in your flour, but commercial flour is pashut that there could be bugs and needs to be checked. So you have bug checking, sifting flour, checking the rice, the leafy vegetables, hafrashas challah. I've been in a pizza shop where the mashgiach comes every morning to check and to make sure that they take off challah. But then I realized 1 second, they're making 3-4 batches a day, and who's on top of the 3-4 batches? And the workers there in this pizza shop are crazy working. They don't have time to think about it. So who's on top of that? So it was nice that there's someone in the morning, but throughout the day there was no one there. So this hafrashas challah, which could be more common here in Eretz Yisrael, hafrashas challah, and these are things that go on in dairy restaurants at least as much as a fleishig restaurant, and the ingredients they use in a dairy restaurant, you have to really be a baki and kashrus from the entire world. There's all different things from all over. In a fleishig restaurant, again, I'm not saying you can walk into any fleishig restaurant you want, but it's more or less chicken, meat. The bishul akum is also much more in a dairy restaurant, because every time you make an order, they put it up, they fry it, they bake it, the fire goes out, the guy puts it on, so you have a guy working in the kitchen, even if he's officially just washing the dishes, but when he gets busy, he's helping out over there. If fire goes off, he turns on. There could be bishul akum. In a fleishig restaurant, more or less, they're putting everything up in the morning, cooking it to a certain amount, which will take it out of the problem bishul akum. So as long as mashgiach was there, making sure, and then throughout the day, they make different types out of it. Vegetables, not as much. The spices that they use nowadays, the quality spices are mainly edachredis, Reuben, and Landau. So again, that idea that people say that dairy is better than fleshy, there was a tkufa. There is a basis to it. There was a tkufa where in Shleim that was true, which I'll explain soon. But right now, I think it's equal, or if not, dairy could be more challenging. And there's also no bittul for those that learn here. There's no bittul when it comes to cheese, because since it gives it the enzyme gives it its surah. If it's not kosher, then it's not bittul. As opposed to cheese, it's a chicken and meat. It could be bittul b'roiv and chazakis and things like that. Okay, so this is just a background to what the kashas. What are we relying on? We're relying on them giving us this service. Now, when it comes to Eretz Yisrael, as Rashiva mentioned, navigating the kashrus, it's just so complicated for a simple American. You know, we're used to, in America, this is good, this is not good, very clear. I eat this, I eat that, a clear list. Over here, all of a sudden, this hechsher has 6 different levels, 6 different standards, and this one we do eat, this one we don't eat, and even in the one that we eat, it's only in some. It gets very confusing, and I'm explaining where the confusing point is. Rabbanut, the regular Rabbanut, I'll just tell you some history. The regular Rabbanut was established when the Medina was formed. They at the time, what? That's a good question. It's a good question. It's a really good question, which deserves at least one share by itself. But whatever that was, when they formed it, so at that point they put together a rabbanim as rabbanut, and part of their job was to offer a kashrus for the people living in Eretz Yisrael. Many years went by. I don't know exactly if it was up or down, but I heard from someone who works for the rabbanut. I can't even tell you his name. It's Liquor. He's an American who learned in Yeshivas Beis Dovid. Later on, came to Eretz Yisrael and learned in Yeshivas Merkaz Harav. See, he told me more than once. He told me a few times. I speak to him when I have questions, but he told me a few times. He said he was learning in Koil there, and Rav Shapiro, who was the chief rabbi at the time, came in one morning and said he feels he can't sleep at night. He has achrayus for the kashrus of the country, and what's he doing for it? So he called together a group of 10 Avrechim, and this person was one of them, and they had a discussion, what could they do? But before they discussed what they could do, the discussion was, who are we catering to? And I think it's an important piece. They were discussing, who are we catering to with our hechsher? And the nusach he said was, not the left or the left of the leftists, but the Noah Yisrael, which are youths that will buy bread on Erev Pesach to eat it on Pesach. That's what they're catering to. Now, in order to get these guys to eat kosher, we need to spread out our hechsher to as many places as we can, and just put it on with whatever level of kashrus possible. It has to be kosher, but on any level of kashrus, and make it cheap that they'll buy it. So they'll buy this kosher product rather than some imported non-kosher product. So he gave us examples. It's also shares. He gave us examples of coolers that they relied on, and they still rely on, where coolers that sometimes the Shulchan Aruch even says that you can't be seimach on them, but they felt they're in such a b'di'evet situation that they need to be seimach on it. I'll give you one example. We spoke about the challah. So I went to that pizza shop, right? They were taking off challah in the morning. Throughout the day, there was no one on top of it. So what is their cheshbon? Their cheshbon is simple. There's someone in the office, in the rabbinate office, every morning who's mafresh challah for all the restaurants that are going to forget to take off challah. Now, if you learn the sugya, it's a chiddush from 10 different angles, really. So does it work or not? Yeah, if you put together all the coolest, you probably could make it work out. But that's not something that you want to, I'm assuming that's not something that you want to rely on. So again, they have backup, but they're relying on coolest just to be able to get out there as much as they can for a cheaper price to reach out to as many people as they want. What happened was Rav Kook and Rav Reuben from the Reuben Hechsher, before he started his Hechsher, they were the Rabbanim of the city Rehovot. And they felt that this is what they're backing up, such a low standard of kashrus. They wanted that in their city there should be a higher level of kashrus, but they had a problem because there's something called the Chok HaKashrut. Chok HaKashrut is that every city has to accept the kashrus of the other city. So what I'm going to tell them, our level is this. So they'll just say, okay, then we'll just buy from all the other cities for their products. So they're not in control. So they were machadish, what's called Rabnu Mahadran. Now, what does mean Rabnu Mahadran? That means the Rabbanim of that city have the right to make a higher level kashrus. So each city, this way it gets confusing. So now I have Rabbanut Ragil, the regular Rabbanut. I have Rabbanut Mahadran, which means every single city rules the Rabbanut Mahadran is being made by the Rabbanim of that city. So I need to know who the Rabbanim are and what clientele they're trying to cater to. And number two, who's implementing them, who's making sure that they're being actually done. So I have to check out every city to figure out, is the Rabbanut Mahadran of this city good or not? So this is where it gets complicated. So in Sfas, Rabbanut Mahadran is good. In Rehovot, it's better than other places. In Netanya, the supervision of it is very good. They have less control of the products coming in, but the supervision is good. I have a connection there to make things a little more complicated. We have a connection there with someone who's in charge of all the Rabbanut Mahadran restaurants in Netanya, and he tells us every Ben Izman, tell the guys to stick to these places, because these places, the products are better. So again, this is where it gets complicated. And then in Yerushalayim, to confuse you more, they created something called Mehuderet, which is the guy who doesn't want to be regular Rabbanut, but he doesn't want to be Mahadran, so he'll do some things towards Mahadran, but not completely. If you look at the sign, we'll say what he does. So now we have this Mehuderet. And then you have what's called Mahadran Mina Mahadran, which is because they're trying to do over the system. So again, it's just very complicated. So, and it's also run by the government. The Rabbanim constantly, there was just recently one of the Rabbanim Yerushalayim, Rav Stern. I can show you documented. I couldn't find that, I wasn't bringing it in. But as he was a Rav, he tried getting it back. He wanted to get in control of it, and he really went around to the restaurants to try to get in control. But the government fought him. They fought him. They broke into his office, took away his papers. They fought against him that he shouldn't get in control of it. So so this is where it gets really complicated. Now, just like in America, there are good hechsherim, top hechsherim, and there are medium hechsherim, there's lower level hechsherim. So too over here also. There are some very good hechsherim, there are medium, and there are some which are not worthwhile. So I can only tell you from my experience of being around and working with some of these hechsherim, my standards, which I made a new list, which I did not have a copy of it either. I came really unprepared today. Because I gave away, yeah, we'll email it to you.
Rabbi, the list already changed, it's fine.
So it's probably true. But the list that at least was yesterday, I gave away somewhere else where I spoke. So again, someone could argue with it, but I'm just, and then what level you want to stick to, that's your decision. I just explained to you, if you decide to eat regular Rabbanut, what standard you're putting yourself in, Rabbanut Mahajim, what standard you're putting yourself into. And like I said, politics, yeah, there are politics, and they're so, no one's transparent. Everyone's afraid the other one's going to shut them down and put them on the headlines of the next day's newspaper, so they're hiding this, hiding that. It's true, but that's not the answer. It's not the answer. There are those that are not doing the same, not doing a real supervision. For sure, compared to, I'm comparing it to American Hechsherim. In America, in a restaurant, there has to be a mashgiach tzmidi. There has to be, from the good Hechsherim, mashgiach tzmidi. Over here, it almost doesn't exist. Skylar has only because I put it there. No, there are no. So, as far as I know, it's not catering to a decent standard. So again, so like you have Edach Redis. Again, what I put on top level is Edach Redis Reuben Landau. Shares doesn't really have that many restaurants. I'm talking about restaurants now. Then you have the next tier is, which again, if you're stuck without the first tier, so I guess you could go to the second tier, which I would put Machpud.
Bells?
Bells, unfortunately, I put lower than that. Why? What do you mean?
Pizza Hut's good then, yeah? Pizza Hut's not good.
Pizza Hut?
I'm pretty sure.
It was Machpud.
I'm pretty sure there's a Machpud
It
sign.
was kilos, and then kilos messed themselves up with that.
So what are they
Because
have now?
everyone asked kilos why.
Now he's out.
The cheese they were using was a Beis Yosef cheese, and then they said no, they're gonna make their own run and all that, and then it came out that cheese was very questionable.
How
Probably
about
not kosher.
What about now?
What?
Well, what hemp are they right now?
I don't know. I don't know. I thought kids pulled off.
how about soya?
So I put in second level. I myself put kilos, machpud, and I forgot the third one. Oh, chuk some seif b'nei brak.
Still going with you.
Again, I think for the
You just busted that we're not kosher.
no, again, it's
That's a good, some places.
the truth is that I'll give you an example. I was with kilos in Ricotta, right? And the dessert there was brought in. They brought in. If you were there, you saw probably on the menu it says except for the dessert. What happened because the dessert was a Beis Yosef dessert, which was made with a butter that kilos does not hold of. And we harassed them, so they had a whole excuse why they allowed it, this, that. But we want them to at least make it known to people. So we forced them to put on the menu a sticker that says that, except for the certain desserts. But again, I'm not out. I mean, I'm not out to passel. So I think it's still second tier.
Pizza Hut, second tier.
I don't know if it's still kilos. Check it out.
It's not.
I don't think it is.
How about soya? Is that even on the
Where?
Soya?
Soar?
Yeah, the extra.
That's very politics. No. I don't know too much about it. I know that they're trying very hard, but they have different policies. I don't know about Soar. Where do you see Soar anyway?
Lady Mashgios.
Where?
Means it's not
They
sure.
have Lady Mashgios.
Say a Star Chaos has later.
I thought Triangle K is the only bad extra in America.
I'm just saying it's not bad to have a Lady Mashgiach. You can have Lady Mashgiach, but they're trained correctly and they know what they're doing. It's not, I mean,
Where's
good
Cholav
seminaries.
Stam fall into the category in Israel?
Cholav Stam. So, if all Cholav, I mean Cholav Yisrael, that's in Eretz Yisrael and in the EU. If you rely on Cholav Stam, you can rely on that to Cholav Stam. But I'm saying that's for a coffee or more.
You shouldn't be drinking Cholov. Yisrael or Stam.
That's the third category.
Why?
Third tier.
Third tier is Aguda Bells. What were you listening?
I said third tier is not kosher.
No, the third tier already. You need to make a decision, a real decision, if you want to go down that road.
What's on the third tier?
Yeah, but Bells, Aguda, and Oh, you doesn't really have that much. Where are they now?
What's wrong with bells that it's all the way on 3?
That's right. That's not good.
Well, we'll turn it off.
It was created from politics.
Huh?
Wasn't bells made because they wanted to go against Eida
See, but I
Chareidis?
told you that's not the answer. That's not the answer. Speak to people. You know, you do your own research. Call Dayanim on bells and ask them to be honest with you. They were honest with me.
They would say.
They were honest with
Risking
me.
their lives.
Correct. Right. Not here. It's not here. They don't have to. Okay. Yeah. What? Yeah, Papagayo is the only. Yeah, I'm just saying that's the only place. Over there, they have machput chicken and meat. And I was there recently, checked it out. And Mahadrin vegetables.
So a place that has good hechsher for the meat, vegetables and mashroms.
Again, but you need to.
What?
What?
Would you go to a restaurant that has good hechsher with meat, but you want a good hechsher with everything else?
No, and let me make that very clear. It's a good point. Let me make it very clear. You go into a restaurant and you ask them what actually, you know what they tell you? Reuben Eida Chareidis. Now, I want to tell you a secret. Reuben Eida Chareidis will never be in the same restaurant until Mashiach comes. So the guy says, Reuben Eida Chareidis. And you tell him, Mehmet? Yeah, Reuben Eida Chareidis. You know what he's trying to tell you? My meat is Reuben Eida Chareidis, but everything else is not. And I don't have a paper from Reuben or Eida Chareidis. That's
But
it.
sometimes you'll go into a restaurant, I've seen this, like they'll have Rabbi for the restaurant, and then they'll have like one section where they have like Reuben meat.
But what are they making the meat with? With what? They're putting spices, and spices could be real questions. Besides Trums and Maestris, and could be if it's coming from this country. Spices could have bugs. What?
Rabbi that's not good for spices?
Again, who's checking it? Plain rabbinut?
Plain
The
rabbinut.
mashgiach is not there often enough to check.
So you're saying it's not.
For you, it's
Third
not good.
category?
No, that was what I was saying before. They made it for. I'm assuming if you're sitting in the Kaisel Beis Dovid, I don't think it's for you.
Third category or fourth?
Definitely kosher. Well, no, Cafe Ramon's fine.
You have to know
What's capital?
what? There are a few places, but you have to know. Okay, so when you talk about meat, it's a whole separate sugya by itself. Meat is measured separately. Like a good meat is good. Kilos meat is good. Even though there are people now questioning, but a good meat, a good Beis Yosef meat. There are different shchitas they do in different places. It's very interesting. They do shchitas in different places. And some of them are done in a much higher standard than others. Machpur also. And he hurt himself because of this at one point. Because it's in Israel and Poland, he does it at one pace. Then in South America, he does a quicker shechita. That's what it's measured by, how many shechitas you do in a minute, and how many treifas come out. He does much quicker in order to get more meat for a cheaper price, so that he can supply it to the poor people. Which again, I'm not saying it's treif. It's not treif.
So it's not.
But
Let me say Beis Yosef is just a name.
Whoa, that's what you're doing? Oh, I think you meant the Yeshivas Beis Yosef. Yeah, nowadays that was says Chalak Beis Yosef. It can mean 10 different things. Officially, it goes back to the Reyes and all that. The Yeshivas, that's the thing. The Yeshivas system is very confusing. So I just leave it at a lower tier because it's just hard to know. We were in factories where they were mamish beautiful, and some factories was a disaster. Sephardim, the Yeshivas Sephardim opened up a whole new kashrus recently because they don't want to have to do it basically. They don't like their. So again, I don't know exactly. It's hard to answer.
In America, we're having a problem with it, except there. It's not up to the standards.
There you go.
What about Bobby's Burgers?
You didn't eat Usher?
What is that? Sounds like a machbut.
Anyone know the heck of Bobby's Burgers?
I'm pretty sure it's must.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So yeah, I put
The dock.
those places are for sure using South American shechita machbud because it's much cheaper. They're not paying 250
machbud's good.
shekel fresh meat, and I put it on second tier.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I have. We have a list of the top tier restaurants, which Weiner someone send the email to me. Okay, we'll send it, and Hatch doesn't have it. Right, don't they? They have schmaltz. Again, I don't think you belong in that. I went once to check the place out. Yeah, I couldn't. What? I'm talking about the mocking at the restaurant where it had to. So like this is also in Eretz Yisrael. This is kedai to know. Good. This is already a good catch. In Eretz Yisrael, we have the opportunity of having mitzvahs which we don't have in Chutz La'aretz. Shumas and Maasros. We had Shemitah, which Shemitah did not end, and the Shemitah will not end at Rosh Hashanah, by the way. On vegetables, it ends, but on fruits, it's still will be Shemitah questions after Rosh Hashanah. But B'negei Trumas and Maasros, the truth is there's an eitzah. If someone wants to buy these drinks, and I don't know if I'm into it, but in Rebar and these other places,
Rebar is good?
Katzefet became a Reuben now. So you have Katzefet.
Well, where's Ruben again?
Ruben's top.
So I'll Trumas Amaisis. There's an eitzah for Trumas Amaisis. There's an eitzah for Trumas Amaisis. You could sign up with the Karen Trumas Amaisis. It's like 40 shekel a year. Sign up with the Karen Trumas Amaisis, and then you can buy fruits and vegetables, if not for Shemitah issues, any way you want, or those drinks. Take off a little more than 1%. There's a nusach to say. If you don't want to say the nusach, just say whatever it says in the nusach should be. You throw it out.
What about
To
Tubi?
be Trumas
What about bugs in
What does that mean?
So hopefully either it's blended or it's blended, but hopefully a lot of them are using, you can ask them, they're using good frozen.
How about the shock?
Yeah.
Didn't discuss yet,
Okay.
which I think is a very mysterious production line, even if you live in America or not. I'd like to ask, in wine, what are the issues involved? And could you please give a ranking, because any time that we think about the one issue, we see about 6 hechsherim on the back. We do not know, and we notice that certain ones go together, certain ones don't. This is a very mysterious.
So the emes is that this is a very good question. And the question about wine, you want to hear the whole process of wine, it's a share by itself. But I just want to tell you one thing. I was sitting with the Sfer Dayan. I sat with him many times. Rav Goldminster, yeah. We at one Tkufa, we were mamish meeting every week. And he's square?
No, but I know.
So he
He's my boy.
so he told me a story that there was this Hamish Hechsher that wanted to do wine. And they asked him if they could join him, and they'll also be part of the process. They get their name on a wine. He said he gets a phone call from his mashgichim there that these guys don't know what a grape looks like. And before you mashgich, you gotta know what a grape is, what goes into a grape. So I want to give you an example. When you come to in a vineyard, they have to keep the vines separate from each other. They don't grow on top of each other to get good grapes. And in a lot of the fields, they plant wheat in between to keep it separate. Now, Masechta Klayim, the first thing is that if you have a klay kerem, you have a vineyard with wheat growing underneath it, it's not like klay zroim when you have a grafted fruit that you're allowed to eat it once it was done. Over here it's asavana. So the first thing the hechsher has to check is the field. You gotta go to the field. Check how the grapes are being grown. Is there any problems of climb over there, which is a common thing? Then the grapes, then there's a whole process of the grapes being picked. Over here in Eretz Yisrael we have Trums and Maestris, has to be taken off properly, which is a sugya by itself. If dafka, before it becomes squeezed, after it becomes squeezed with yoytze, depends how big of a brisker you are. So there's also a sugya about that. Then you move on to bringing it to the factory. At some point in the factory, if there's goyim working there, which there are goyim over there, or questionable people, which may be goyim or not, so then at some point they can't be working with the process. So that's where a lot of the shadows come in. Now over here also you have to be very careful this coming year. It's not so much this coming year yet because the grapes of Shemitah are being harvested now in Elul. So the wine of the grapes of Shemitah is not going to be until at least next year. So and then you'll have labels which look like exactly the same label as a non-Shemitah wine, with little letters Het Mechira, so that you shouldn't see it. But you have to be very careful to look out for that. There's still bottles from previous Shemitahs on the market. But over here also, you have to get a good hechsher. The reason why there's a lot of hechsherim on the bottles of wine is because I think the law, or that's what it is that the rabbanim of the area have to also put their hechsher on. So there's the grapes, there's the press, and things like that. So that's why you always see those other hechsherim there. Again, sometimes you could be mevara, which I've done a few times. You could be a mevara from American hechsherim that come here to make wine, but their hechsher will only go on bottles that are being exported to America. But sometimes they'll tell you we also have to do with the regular run. Also, we know what's going on there, and it's fine.
Okay, in OU, you said a lot of
Very
wines.
much, right.
That
Okay, you don't see so much here, even though okay is giving the hechsher on bottles from Barkan and those things which are being sent to America. So I spoke to okay. He said they don't take full achrayas on the wine that's being over here, but it is the same run.
Second guy.
So again, if someone wants to rely on that, they can rely on that. But that's your choice.
What's with Buffalo
Is it
Trace?
true?
What's with Buffalo Trace?
Because they take an achrayas on the bottles that get the okay on, that's the full achrayas. But if something else goes on in the factory when they're not there or something like that, so they say we feel that it's the same process that's happening, but to say that we have our stamp on it doesn't have our stamp. So again, from Bachram a lot of times, Friday afternoon, it's
What's
If
with Buffalo Trace?
if my phone rings 8 times in a row, I know it's someone that needs a restaurant for supper. I'm very serious about this. It's Shkia time, like second Seder. Somebody will answer and say I'm in second Seder, and they're like, "But where am I gonna eat where am I gonna eat supper?" And it took me time to realize that by Yena's taka, I'm kuchna b'shalos.
Is it true that you told someone that if they're fleishigs and they eat
There's no kashrus.
milchigs by mistake, that they can continue eating?
It's true, I said it, but the item doesn't. The item doesn't get excited about that.
I'm pretty excited.
Why? How often does it happen?
No, it happened before and someone told me off.
So you know what? I'll do tshuva.
No, it's a right thing.
What's
The problem is the guys are gonna start making mistakes.
That's why I stopped saying it.
what's with buffalo trays?
Okay, well,
Sure.
So these things.
Tell it to the
you
mature
have to look at this-
No,
you
someone
have to
said
look at
that.
the-
Someone said that. What do you call it? They don't sell it for Pesach. That's the
Yeah,
issue.
right. So you have to look at the CRC list. There
So it has to have a hechsher on it.
You should, because you can have Cham Shalom, Shaz, like you said, and you can have other Shaz. That's also how much you say Mechanim by Shizheta, by Sherry Cask on different drinks.
There's no sherry cast.
What?
No sherry cast in bourbon.
Right, that's true. That's true.
No, there's a special run in bourbon. Bourbon has to be new oak.
So basically, the only issue could be is Pesach. The only issue for it could be Pesach. If that.
You need more makeup for Svarim, but Yosef or Mahmoud or others.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Not the same thing.
Yes, it goes like this. The hind quarter is the Machbud Shechspor that they serve. So that's the shchita, the deacon, the nikah, which needs to be done correctly. If they're doing it correctly, then it's okay. You have to know that they're doing it correctly. I don't know. I can't figure it out. All I know is that someone went around saying that they're the best of all the places. I spoke to the brother who was saying it. He told me he's relying on 2 other people. Found that those 2 other people never sat there to check it out. How do you say? You have to sit there a full day and just watch what's going on. That's what you have to do. My guy goes to the restaurant. He sits there for 6 hours, sees what's going on, sees the process, how they're dealing with it.
Yeah, I didn't know they don't just put up a show for you. Yeah, how do you know you're sitting there for a full day? They could put up a show for you for the whole day.
You're right. If they don't know you're there, right? If they don't know you're there, but there are tricks how to get away.
Make a show.
Okay, everyone should have a tzlacha. Rav Kiva Eger, there was a meister Rav Kiva Eger. There was a boy in his city which was being very matzliach and learning, and one day all of a sudden he started going down in his hatzlacha, and they came to Rav Kiva Eger, the parents, and said, "Why is my son not being matzliach?" So Rav Kiva Eger said, "Maybe he ate some tray." So Rav Kiva Eger, so the parents said, "It's impossible." He leaves the house with food, goes to cheder, comes back, there's nothing there. They found that at one time on the way home there was a chasna taking place in one of the big auditoriums there, non-kosher. He ate a little tray. So they went back to Rav Kiva Eger. You know what he said? He said, "Send him to Yerushalayim and let him learn Yerushalayim will be a ticket." So here in Yerushalayim, that's a ticket.